Good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock, and I'll call the meeting in order. Item 1.1, is there any matters on today's agenda where conflict of interest arises or pecuniary interest? Okay, none declared. We have the agenda here. Is there any additions to the agenda? Councillor Holm?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add Southern Regional Stormwater discussion to the closed session. We had our meeting this morning, so I'd like to brief council on that.
So you want that on the closed part? Okay. Any other items? Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Pauls, any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Yeah, it's carried. Then you'll notice at 2:45 we'll break if we need to do the check presentations for the community grants and that. Okay, so then we have 3.1, the regular council meeting minutes of June the 10th, 2019. Any errors or omissions?
I'll make a motion to accept them as presented.
Councillor Chapman moves as presented. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And 3.2, special council meeting minutes of June the 9th, 2019. Any errors or omissions?
I'll move the motion.
Okay, Councillor Chapman, any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Yeah, it's carried. Okay, and then we have Andrea Kestner to give us an update on the fire hall. Welcome, Andrea.
So you're correct. I'd like to give you an update on the construction of the fire hall. So to date, we're about 90% done on the steel erection for the new bays and the new EOC area. And then the bays and the EOC area will be done by about, sorry, I should just be looking down. Sorry about that. Yeah, so the steel should be done by about the middle of June. Next steps is getting into the plumbing and the curbs and all the underground portion of it. Southwest Design and Construction and their subconsultants are currently on schedule to complete the addition by the end of November of this year. And then at that point, then our fire department will be able to move into the new portions, and then they'll start on the renovation part of the project. So that will be done. They're saying at this point it should be done in May of 2020. And then just for your information, we've actually set up a time-lapse camera of it. So Lana, if you want to pull that up, it's just under a minute. If you'd like to watch it, it kind of just shows where we are today. At the end of the project, we'll create a nice video, make sure all the evening shots are out, and things like that. But I just thought it would be an opportunity for you to see what we've done so far. as of the end of May, the total value of work performed is just over 900,000. So with our 10% holdback, we've paid out $814,207.86. We are, yes, Your Honor.
Remind me to turn on my mic, I guess. I don't see any other questions. On motion to receive for information then? Counselor Lloyd moves for information. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. And Andrea, you get the next item, the Centennial Pathway.
Yes, so our next construction project is the Centennial Pathway around our Centennial wetland. So construction on that started on June 4th, and they're on schedule to be done at the end of June here for it. So to date, all the path has been paved. We have about 2 kilometers of pathway, and then they also need to install park benches, the picnic tables, some additional landscaping, a gazebo, things like that. So what's outstanding on the tool strip construction is blending and cleaning up the side slopes on each side of the path, doing the seating, and then they'll be installing the park benches and picnic tables. And then our Town of Coaldale Parks Department will be doing all of the additional landscaping around there. So that'll be good. And then the planting is scheduled to be completed this July, and as I said, the pathway itself will be done at the end of June. And then the last component is the Watershed Resilience and Restoration Project has funded a educational component as part of this. And so what we've been planning and are currently working on is some educational signs around the pond in certain locations. So that'll be things on what the facility is and how it works, and what's special about our wetland. It'll also include information on the type of landscaping, the trees and shrubs and aquatic plants that you might see there. And also we'd like to have at least one on the type of wildlife that you may see, different birds and things in the water. So that we're hoping to be done that and have those installed this fall. That's all I had for you.
Any questions for Andrea? Counselor Chapman?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Andrea, for your report here, and thanks to all the people that are involved with this project. 2 questions. Number 1, is this pathway currently already accessible, or?
It will be as soon as they are done construction.
Okay, so it's until it's fully completed then, is that?
Yes, we'd like to keep people off on a hole. Yeah, just because they're working on either side of the path, so we want to make sure that they have the ability to finish up. Yeah.
Just more of a comment than a question. On the south side of the highway where the other project is taking place, the residents along there are just incredibly impressed. And what they've seen already, they're very, very delighted with the way it's rolling out, and the landscaping portion is really improving. They're saying already it's improving the value of their properties, and they're very, very excited about the project. The one question that came to me was the big dirt pile on the south side of the highway, and where you might be with that big dirt pile.
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman. Yes, there is a large dirt pile there. We do have the contractor scheduled to remove it, and they have until this fall to get rid of that dirt pile.
Any further questions for the presenter? Well, thank you very much for your presentation, Andrea. A motion to receive for information. Councillor Simpson moves. Any discussion? You seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. And then we have Spencer for rezoning land use bylaw 759P06-19.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon to you and Council. As you've already mentioned, this is a proposal for bylaw 759-P-06-19 to amend the land use zoning of two properties described as Plan 171-2080 blocks 5 and 6, or Block 5, lots 6 and 7. That's the properties directly south of the McDonald's. The proposed rezoning would bring the properties from what is currently highway commercial to general commercial zoning. So highway commercial we deem C2 and commercial we deem C1 currently. The intent of the rezonings is to allow those two pieces of property being slightly offset from the highway closer to the residential neighborhoods to the south to be more used in a way that would possibly be more sensitive to the residential context of the neighborhoods to the south, while still respecting the fact that highway commercial uses can be undertaken in that general commercial land use zoning. So it's, for all intents and purposes, a fairly minor tweak that allows for the two pieces of property that are in somewhat of a transitional area between highway commercial and residential areas to be used in ways that would be more complementary to the residential setting of the areas to the south and the southeast. So that's all I have for the proposed first reading. If there are any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Any questions through the Spencer? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship. Through to Spencer on this on the first on this proposed land use designation, the changes basically would allow for permitted rather than a discretionary use as well. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, generally yes. What it would do is shift some of the discretionary uses to permitted from the highway commercial to commercial zonings and introduce a few more uses that would be more in keeping with being nearer to a residential area.
Councillor Holm?
So I'm assuming this is the property that's the dental office now and the property right next to it?
That's correct. So it's the property that the town owns to the south and the property the dental office owns to the north. And in discussion with the property owners to the north, this is something that they had no issue with.
Any further questions? Anybody care to sponsor first reading of the Councillor Holm? Okay. Any discussion? We have a motion from Councillor Holm to support first reading of the rezoning of the land use bylaw 759-P-06-19. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you, Spencer. And we have 7.1. Oh, go ahead, Ken.
Question through to council. Did we make a determination on whether the second reading and third reading and the public hearing will take place at a special meeting or in the first meeting in September? I just want to make sure that we clarify so we can advertise accordingly.
What would be administration's recommendation, Spencer?
Well, Mr. Mayor, that would be really a matter that's up to council at this point. We could wait for the September meeting, the first meeting in September, to run the public hearing, or if council so wishes, a separate public hearing could be set for a special meeting.
Kaylin, go
I
ahead.
think September's works for administration if that works for council.
Okay. So you need a motion to set the public hearing date for the first meeting in September then?
Yes, please.
Anybody care to make that motion? Councillor Simpson moves that we have the first, the second reading and the public hearing on the first September meeting of council. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Okay, and then we have 7.1. Every year we have AUMA and So we have an opening for 2 members of council, so last year we had Councillor, go ahead, Councillor Holm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there's nobody else wanting to put their name forward, I put my name forward as one of the councillors to attend
Okay.
AUMA this year.
Okay, I'll give the Nets right of refusal to the esteemed colleagues to the right here, Councillor Lloyd, Pauls, or Avery. Anybody have any interest? Councillor Lloyd?
I'm not sure if I'll be able to. Oh, I'm scheduled for surgery, so I'll just have to see how that goes. How soon do you have to know?
So we'll put you in, and then as soon as you know if that's not doable, then we can get an alternate. Okay. So a motion to allocate the 2 spots to Councillors Holm and Lloyd then. Councillor Avery, all in favor? And then we have the 7.2, the annexation summary. Go ahead, Spencer.
Thank you, Mayor. As you're all well aware, on April 1, 2018, approximately 1,460 acres of land were annexed into the town of Coaldale. As per Section 135 1D of the MGA, which states bylaws and resolutions of the old municipal authority that apply specifically to the area of land, and in this case that would be the area of land that was annexed, continue to apply to it until repealed or others are made in their place by the new municipal authority. So in this case, that means the Lethbridge County Land Use Bylaw continues to apply to all annexed properties until such time that they're rezoned. As council likely remembers, in October of last year, the lands encompassing the lagoons were rezoned, and the lands in the quarter section where the Malloy Phase 2A ponds are located were rezoned. The remaining town-owned properties and privately owned properties were initially intended to be rezoned by this point in time. However, other matters took precedent, so the original timeline has been adjusted as such. So in this sense, we're simply bringing this information forward as a summary of feedback that's been provided by the landowners, the newly annexed landowners up to this point, and presenting to council the adjusted timeline so that everybody's aware of when we plan on carrying through with the rezoning of the properties to suitable town zonings. So from where we're at today, currently I'm providing council with the summary of feedback collected from annexed landowners. Over July and August, we'll prepare land use district amendments and rezoning bylaws. September, the land use district and rezoning bylaws would be presented to council for first reading, and the advertising and public hearings for those proposed bylaws would be carried out in September, and likely in late September or early October, the land use district and rezoning processes would be finalized with second and third reading of those bylaws. So just as a brief recap of what we've done to date, in order to ensure the perspectives of the newly annexed landowners were considered prior to undertaking some of these rezonings that will now be the focus of work in this fall, a rezoning package was sent to all newly annexed landowners in January of 2019, providing detailed information regarding the current zonings that are on their properties, the proposed town zonings, and opportunities to discuss any changes they wish to see in the proposed town zonings. As a result of those discussions, we had 4 one-on-one meetings with landowners, a number of phone calls and emails, and 3 different sets of landowners who attended 5 scheduled workshops in February. We had meetings with the Rehoboth Christian Ministries, which the summary of findings are in the staff report. Essentially, given the unique nature of the operations that occur with that particular organization, it's likely that a direct control zoning would be most suitable for them, given that they're a mix of retail and light manufacturing right along the highway there. The second request that was made was from the Alberta Birds of Prey Foundation and Mr. Colin Weir personally for the 2 pieces of property that are adjacent and north of the town-owned lands where the Birds of Prey currently leases from. Essentially, the request made by the foundation and Mr. Weir were that instead of going to institutional recreational, which is the zoning that covers all of the town-owned lands where the town's drainage ponds are and the foundation leases from, the request has been made that those properties be rezoned to urban reserve instead. And basically, the reasoning was as follows: the ability to accommodate staff and volunteer housing on a suitable portion of the parcels, which would align with future plans for the foundation. The wetlands that are in the process of being designed for the parcel are considered a private utility under the land use bylaw, which would be a definition that fits within the urban reserve zoning. And educational and tourism-focused structures would be able to be erected on the parcel more easily than if it were institutional or recreational zoning. So specifically, in terms of the summary requests from both the foundation and Mr. Weir, they would be that the parcel described as Plan 57JK Block 5, Lot 2, which is north of Mr. Weir's parcel in the staff report, be rezoned to urban reserve instead of institutional recreational, and that the use of a second dwelling or additional dwellings be included as a listed use in that land use district. And for Mr. Weir's personal property, the request would be almost identical in that the lands be rezoned to urban reserve instead of institutional recreational, and that second or additional dwellings be included as a listed use in the urban reserve zoning. And the final item in the summary report includes a list of uses that individual landowners have questioned as to whether they could be provided or accounted for in the urban reserve zoning if it were to be approved for a change by council. So generally there is a desire for a second dwelling or additional dwellings to be at the very least a discretionary use in the urban reserve district, which it currently is not. So that would be a change. And then the inclusion of the following uses in the urban reserve land use district was also requested. And I should note before reading out the list that these were requests made by one or more individual landowners, and it's not necessarily reflective of the desires of all landowners in the area. So there were uses such as agricultural services, garden centers, horticulture, market garden and nurseries, stockpiles, shipping containers, and recreational vehicle storage. So essentially over the course of the next 2 months, those being July and August, the staff would work on a list of potential positive and negative impacts that each of those uses that have been requested to be included in the town zoning would carry, and we would bring that back to council as a part of the first reading process in September. So again, moving forward, we'll use the summer to work on some of the details. In September, we'll present the land use districts for first reading and start the advertising process, hopefully to wrap up the entire process in September or October. In terms of public engagement, just to make sure all of the annexed landowners remain up to date on what's occurring, a letter's been prepared for the annexed landowners, and it will be ready to be sent out in early July, basically recapping what's been discussed with council this afternoon. So in terms of next steps from council, I would respectfully request that you accept this report for information, and of course, if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Well, thank you very much for the report and all the work you've done. It's been a busy few months for you with the public engagement and meetings and everything that you've been doing. So thank you very much, Spencer. And I see Councillor Chapman has his mic on.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you as well, Spencer. As the mayor said, that you've done a lot of work already on this, and I just have two questions for you. Number one being the comparison of urban fringe, rural urban fringe, and the urban reserve. Are they two distinctive? Are they distinctively separate components as compared to like the county and the town?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, yes, the county's zoning rural urban fringe is the zoning that's encompasses the majority of the annexed lands still, and the urban reserve zoning is the town's similar zoning that we would want to place on the majority of those annexed lands.
Okay, thank you. And my second question really kind of just follows in that suit. Then, in order to bring it into the urban reserve, then the inclusion of the following uses really have to follow the spirit of the annexation agreement, that would not subject, those annexed lands to urban issues for the next 25 years unless they do any modifications or improvements to their lands.
Through to the chair to Councillor Chapman, probably the most relevant comment at this point would be that if any of the uses that landowners have requested to be included in the urban reserve district are approved by council to be in that district, then that opens up the number of possible uses a annexed landowner could undertake on their property without having an impact to taxation, for instance.
Questions? I'll entertain a motion to receive for information then. Councillor Pauls, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And then item 7.3, our CEO, Kaylin Hastings, will update us on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In keeping with the deadline established by Municipal Affairs to have the ICF framework completed by March 31st, 2020, I'd like to report that Lethbridge County has led the process, and I've been able to participate in a number of discussions with the urban municipalities in our region on a diversity of different topics where we collaborate on a regular basis. So this would include, under the umbrella of collaboration, emergency services, transportation, waste services, recreation, water and wastewater. It's the biggest takeaway I've had so far is that a lot of these collaboration frameworks are already in place. We're just now formalizing them a bit more universally amongst the Lethbridge County region. So I'd say they're going well. We've done a lot of good research and looking what other places have done. So there's been a little bit of piggybacking, but they've been good discussions, and we hope a little bit later on in the year that we'll have a bit more of a concrete update in terms of the findings of our discussions to present to all of the councils later this fall.
Any questions through the Kaylin? Councillor Chapman, are you?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. And just as a representative of council on the Highway 320, their strategic planning process involves that Highway 3 be included under the transportation component for the ICFs, and I would just encourage you to keep that on the forefront in your deliberations.
Okay, thank you.
And then with this, is not necessarily the intention that there would be the same ICF for each community and the county? There'd be separate ones, or are they all going to be, is the intent to try and shape an identical ICF with all the municipal partners in the county?
A great question. I would say that the guiding principles will be, universal amongst the municipalities, but the types of specific collaboration opportunities, they will vary because there are nuances according to geography. But for the most part, it's been a very open and transparent process with all of the urban municipalities at the table. So if there are any unique variations from one urban to the other, that will be covered, and it's being discussed openly in front of all of the urban. So there'll likely be some customization to answer your question.
Good, thank you. Any other questions through our CEO? And then I would entertain a motion to receive this for information as well. Councillor Chapman, call the question. All in favor? Okay. Then we have a departmental report. So we have the financial variance report 8.1. Welcome, Kyle.
Good afternoon. So in front of you have a budget update. So this is from January to May 2019. We've also accounted for future projections here. So kind of you have the summary of the expected changes in front of you. So the brackets are over budget expected, and no brackets are under budget. So we have wages, service agreements, contracted services, rental revenue, debenture payments, grants, and professional services. So currently, right now, we're projecting over budget of 46.5 to 96.5 thousand for the year. So this is our current projection. So what are we doing about this? As part of the procurement process that town Coaldale must follow, there's several contracts and services that administration is exploring out as part of the tendering process. We've kind of identified a few areas of efficiencies that could be gained that we're looking to explore for potential cost savings. And generally, there's additional savings at year end within our various departments for larger expenses that are generally estimated, such as utilities, insurance, WCB, and employee benefits. So those areas usually do have a little bit of a surplus in them. So right now, with those general estimates and the efficiencies that we're exploring for the rest of the year, we anticipate we can get a chunk of that deficit back down to zero. So this is just kind of an update where we're projecting right now. We'll have an update for you back in September after the summer as well. If there's any questions on this, be happy to address them.
To our CFO, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Worship. Just through to Kyle on contracted services. You're specifying the overages related mostly because of media campaigns. Is that because the garbage and compost recycling had to be moved around from alley to street
No.
and that, or what's the? Could you describe that a little bit for me?
Yeah, sorry, not specifically for media campaigns. Part of it, the majority of it actually relates to the waste recycling and compost program. Some costs have come back in higher than expected. In addition, there's been some additional costs for some of the video productions that the town has been working on. So it's not all for Say Media. They're two different items there in the staff report.
Any additional questions? Well, thanks for this timely update, and we look forward to after the summer rate one to see how well you've done in minimizing overage.
Perfect. Thank you.
Motion to receive for information. Councillor Simpson, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, and then we have Terry May, I think, and maybe Spencer.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Just bring this forth as an update on the street lighting that we had, that you had put forward in the fall to go ahead with this year. And in our process of also getting estimates on the rest of the town, we came across some lower estimates from Fortis. So I wanted to bring this back. I had them re-quote both the first area again, and on this staff report it actually lists the two quotes and the price difference. The difference between the two is they were using overhead now, or in the newest quote. So I wanted to bring that back and put that in front of you and see what your thoughts were on going with overhead power instead of burying everything. So. Like I said, the first quote, which was already passed in council in the fall, was 297,000. It gains you 27 new lights. The new quote for the same area that we did with overhead gained us 48, I believe, total new lights, but that's using overhead where we could. They still do put some underground, but only where there's trees and blockage in the way. Otherwise, it's overhead altogether.
So then I responded to Fortis to determine why it was quite a difference, and a couple of reasons for that. One, obviously, the cost of vac trucks and burying things underground is significantly higher. Several of our shallow utilities run in some of those streets, so that increases the cost there. There's also some kickback for some salvage that we would get if we went overhead, salvaging some of the poles that are feeding individual lots currently. So that is the difference. So I wanted to bring that back in front of you before we go any further, and ask that you kind of make a decision on which way we proceed forward. I do have the 4 recommendations here. So either we continue on with what you'd already determined, and we put everything underground. That we go with the newest quote, which is mostly overhead, or that we do some sort of hybrid. So we try and minimize what is going to be overhead for the residents. And the last recommendation was to, I don't think I phrased that correctly, but to choose one of the previous options and then reach out to the public if that's what you so wish.
So then, the first option, that was within budget of what
It was already
approved?
and so it was 297. Unfortunately, like I said, when we started getting the quotes for the next areas, they were significantly lower because they were using overhead more. So then we got them to requote the first area using overhead where they could, and that's why you have the 2 different prices.
And both scenarios achieve the desired outcome for proper street lighting and that?
It does. It's just that the second quote actually consists of more. It travels a little further west in the town, so it covers a larger area. So you actually get more street lighting and the price difference. Like I said, the substantial cost difference was trying to hydrovac and bury the lighting around the shallow utilities that are already existing there. So.
Okay, any other questions from members of council? Councillor
Thank you,
Lloyd?
Your Worship. Through to Terry. So this area is all overhead right now?
It is.
Okay.
It is. And any location where it would be underground, we'd continue on with underground.
Right.
These areas are existing overhead right now.
And then Councillor Holm?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Thanks, Terry, for bringing this forward. I know we've been looking at this for over a year now, I think almost a year and a half, maybe. And so I'm glad to see some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, maybe. My question to you, Terry, is maybe just more on a specific. I'm just looking at a map here on 22nd Avenue. I guess that right at the Kinsman or that play park there. And you're adding another light there, and you've already got 5, 10, 15 lights already in there. Is that?
Well, because all of our lighting was switched to LED, you get a lot more focus down. So you don't get that carry over to the street as much, is the idea. Now, we can, if that is sufficient, we can certainly eliminate that one. We have a little bit of flexibility there. That's kind of our third option where we work out the best way possible. But it's generally set that way for the focus. The light now is very focused on the ground. So even though you get light when you walk around, you don't get it in the places that necessarily need it. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. Have we had any statistics on light outages in areas that are above ground versus underground? Is there any statistical difference on when those lights get knocked out because of windstorms and trees hitting the power lines and that type of thing versus underground?
Not to my knowledge, no. I haven't had any.
Councillor Simpson?
So on the quote number 2 map, you have on, so just off of 21st A Avenue to on 23rd Street, you have one light that it actually goes diagonal, like it goes across and down. Is there already overhead power lines or something that's already doing that?
The one that crosses 23rd Street?
Yeah.
No.
No.
It actually comes through the alley there.
Oh, okay.
But there are no lights at the front of that street.
Okay.
So
And in the future, if we were going to bury all the lines that were there, is this something that could be easily done with Fortis, or is it going to be a big expense in the future too to bury those lines extra?
it's going to be a big expense. It's all based on a cost per meter. Even in the option 2, they are still putting some underground. 23rd Avenue is or 24th Avenue is an example. There's a lot of trees there. There's just no way to put that up in the front. So that's kind of what he came back with based on what we have to deal with there. There's a lot of trees that there's no way to put them up overhead. So those were still underground. The bigger focus was 22 and 21A avenues because of the underground shallows that are in through the street. That's what makes it a little more difficult there.
Okay, and
Just
Councillor
one
Dunn?
more quick question. The new lighting, there are 28 lights or 27 lights altogether?
If we go underground, it's 27 lights. It'll be 10 arms and 17 new street lights. So the poles will still be there, whether you go underground or above ground. It's just that you'll have the overhead cable.
Okay. And they'll all be the same lumens, is that right, as
Yes.
the rest of the town?
It's all standard LED now.
And Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to make a motion that we go with option 2 on the recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Avery to adopt option number 2. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Wilson, okay. All right. And I think we're probably at a point where we probably should just recess to do the community checks and that. I think this is a good point. Is any? Thank you, Terry and Spencer, for your presentation.
Okay, so in front of you, just kind of an update on interest rates for borrowing. So as part of corporate services, we're continually looking at interest rates, how we can leverage borrowing. How does that compare to what we're currently earning on our own investments? So interest rates have dropped quite significantly from our original capital budget in November. Currently, I just gave an example on here. For example, the $10 million debenture for the rec center, the interest rate from the budget was just under 3.5. That rate now it's close to the 2.7. Kind of put into context for you that, over 25 years of interest, that's over $1.2 million in a decrease. So it just shows you how important these are to keep track of. So to put into kind of a smaller context here, as part of the capital budget, we have planned to pay for several items through reserves. And based on current borrowing rates, we can actually borrow for a cheaper rate than we can invest in. So from a finance perspective, these items that we have budgeted for from reserves, if we can better manage cash flow from these by looking at borrowing for them short term, say 3 to 5 years, and using the cash we have to, one, maintain cash flow, and two, invest at higher rates, would council be interested in a further report detailing what projects we could invest in short term rather than pay for from reserves? Did I lose anybody, or?
Councillor Holm?
I'm not the expert in finances as you are. I certainly agree that if it makes economic sense to do so, I would like to see, as we make those decisions, though, maybe a short little report on each one of those capital items as we go ahead and start moving forward with them at the time of doing that, to say which makes sense. And if it makes sense to borrow and hold the cash, I'm all in favor of saving the taxpayer and saving myself some money.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, right now we're looking, just to kind of a scope of it, we're looking for the projects in our capital budget. So those projects will range between $300,000 that was, say, budgeted for the snow plow versus, I think it was 8th Street, which was $2.5–3 million debenture, right? So the funding sources still wouldn't change. If we were paying for those through reserves, we'd still pay through the debt through reserves. It's just leveraging our borrowing rates, which in my mind is economically responsible.
I think it makes good sense. And then would you propose to bring something forward in the July meeting? If you were going to take advantage of any borrowing, you'd have to, the next cycle for drawdown on the ventures is September, so you can't just wait till.
Correct. And we're not allowed to borrow for a project that we've already started incurring costs for. So we're working with infrastructure or engineering to see which projects, what timelines do you have, so we can make sure we have those borrowing bylaws in place. So for example, at the next council meeting, the one of the highest importance would be the 8th Street project. So we'll bring forward a staff report with a borrowing bylaw that's should council see fit, we could proceed with that.
Okay, thanks for putting some creative energy into that idea, Kyle. Any other questions through to administration? So I guess a motion to direct the administration to bring back a proposal at the next meeting of council, then? Would that be what you're seeking?
Not seeking, I guess, just wondering if it would be worthwhile to council to have that type of thing, and I think it is worthwhile. So whether or not that needs a motion, I don't know that part, but
Probably doesn't hurt to have it on the record that you have some direction, I guess. Councillor Holm?
Make that motion to bring back the staff report at our July 10th meeting. Is that the right date? 8th? July 8th meeting?
The next meeting
The
coming up.
next meeting.
Okay, all right. We have Councillor Holmes' motion. Councillor Lloyd, do you have a question or can?
Yes, Mayor. Do you need another report on it, or you just want to go ahead with it?
we'd have to bring back a report with a borrowing bylaw to be able to do that. So the July 8th meeting would being mainly focused on 8th Street.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Oh, you had a comment? Sorry.
Just a quick point of information. So as part of the July 8th meeting, a borrowing bylaw, a draft borrowing bylaw would have to be part of that agenda package because it would be a short-term loan. If council wishes, all 3 readings could be made that meeting. Otherwise, we'd have to either call a special meeting sometime over the summer or wait till September. So just as part of the report, there will be a draft bylaw as well for council's consideration.
At 8.4, we should have a motion to receive that list for information then. The community grant recipients. Councillor Lloyd, any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. And then we have Councillor Lloyd with Centennial Homecoming Weekend update.
Yeah, just a quick update. Sorry about that. So this is just a quick update on the homecoming. This is the program. It's been about the same. We're just adding Kate Andrews. It's from 7 till 9 on Saturday. Some of the students have indicated they'd like to go back and see the school and walk the halls. So we're doing that. And the book is coming along good. We have 2-week deadlines, so we're pushing really hard to get that done. And we're also working on a program. Oh, do you want to put the book up there? So that's what the book is going to look like. There's a page for every year. And I start out with the mayors of the year. Keep going. That's 1904 to 1908, and it just keeps going down. The mayors and the doctors. I'm highlighting the schools and the churches and the hospitals, and any business that was on Main Street and ever was there, and other businesses that have been in town for 15 years or more. So there's a lot of past pictures and license plates. I try to get as many license plates and a car of the year. So, and it's different events that have happened throughout the last 110 years. It's been a huge project, but it's been fun. So hopefully we'll get it all together in 2 weeks. If anybody has any more pictures, still looking for pictures. It's interesting, just stop there for a second. We've got a pin, a high school pin in 1932 with the owl. We haven't wavered too much on that one. But, yeah. We were also doing a promotional souvenir centennial book with some of those old pictures will be in here, plus the center will be the program and advertisements, and this will be going to every household in Coaldale. The committee is sponsoring that so that everybody will have the program ahead of time, and there'll also be some available at the event. Another thing that's been kind of interesting is I've taken all the businesses on Main Street and made a big spreadsheet. So the red ones are all the businesses that are on Main Street now, and all the black ones are the businesses that ever were on Main Street ever. So I'd like everybody to take a look at that and make sure, because there's a few people that have added things already that I haven't remembered. We've only been here for not quite as long as some other people. So, and we're going to have this on a big spreadsheet hanging up at homecoming. So I think that's it for my report. Does anybody have any questions?
You and your committee of nobody else probably.
Oh, I would. Yeah. committee, Kim has been my right-hand person on the committee, wanted to mention that. He's been an awesome support.
Well, you're
And
the
Susan-
driving force. It's more or less a committee of one, I would say. So it's a labor of love for Doreen, so it's coming together quite nicely by the looks of it. Any questions through the Doreen on?
We're waiting for responses. They're hard to come by. People are last-minute people, so we're not sure on numbers at all. A lot of people from out of town. Oh, Ontario, lots on BC, states, where Edmonton, a lot of people coming from out of town, so we got to
Right.
show them our best here.
Right. Okay. I think we should have a motion to receive that for information. Councillor Simpson? Oh, Councillor Avery? Okay. Councillor Avery moves for information. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And then we have the handy ride update. Councillor Chapman wants to give us a brief update on the handy ride.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and just wanted to update you on this group. The association held their AGM on Wednesday, or last Wednesday, June 18th. And first of all, I really want to publicly thank the volunteer individuals for their service and significant impact in the community busing in the Coaldale the last, I would say, 20 years or more. And, beginning with its president, Leonard Fast, and secretary, Dixie McCarley, the board members, including Jack Humphrey, Jack Penner, John T. Clausen, and Loretta Coyne. And of course, the two drivers that really made things happen, and that was Jerry Virginello and Tracy Dow. And many have served on this association for, well, almost forever, it seems. And on December 31st of 2018, they gave their notice to the town that they would like to retire from the board and service, and also the drivers wanted to retire as well. So the AGM was really kind of the pivotal point for the association, and that was to give enough time to recruit new board members and new drivers. So with that, we were really grateful for the space of time to fill positions as necessary. And on June 18th, we made official the new team of builders. So the first order of business at the AGM was to review the financial status, and Everett Dirksen presented the financials to the association conclusive to December 31st. So even though there's some dollars left, it isn't a deficit operation, and they're grateful for the town for being the guaranteed sponsor at this point. And that is really the main monthly contribution from the town that helps with the daily operation of the bus. So the new board members are these. The president is Tim Jansen, vice president is Jack Humphreys, the treasurer is Jack Penner, and the secretary is Heather Anta. And of course, I'm the town representative on the association. So we have new directors, including Tim Weens and Stacy Marriott. And of course, we have 3 new drivers, including Michael Hogel, Howard Sharp, and of course, Harley Packer. With the AGM done, we do plan to hold monthly meetings to resolve a number of items for deliberation. So mostly operational, including payroll, the post office, advertising, and marketing, some accounting procedures and software to keep the association organized, and really a review of how can we build up members, or the numbers of passengers, and who the people are that we serve here in the town of Coaldale. I think one of the other big things is to bring on more directors into the association, and also to bring more sponsors, which is really critical and important, and find new ways to build up the financial position of the association. In the meantime, a couple of our spouses are offering to help with some of the accounting, bookkeeping, and services. So we do continue to trust that this service will continue. And I might just say in closing that, as one senior most recently pointed out to me, and he said this, that Bill, since giving up my license, I will have to move into Lethbridge. any access to transportation for my needs is important to me, and I'll go where that is available. So I think that's a really clear message to all of us, and I want to confirm my own commitment to the needs of our residents, and in particular our seniors. And in order for our community to be a robust and well-rounded, a fully balanced amenities such as a handy ride is necessary. That's my report.
Are there any questions for Councillor Chapman? I want to thank you for driving the handy bus discussion and keeping that going and transitioning it. And as you say, it's an important amenity, and we look forward to more updates and see how the business model will evolve under the new leadership. Councillor Lloyd.
Yes, Your Worship, through the bill. Just one point of interest. I first got this in the book. I've got it in you guys starting at 1990. Is that right? That's when the first bus was bought through the Japanese Canadian people. And do you remember that? No, you don't remember that. But I think that's what I have in the book. I'll check with you later to make sure I got the right information.
Possibly during the time of the
1990.
Wellness Foundation and during that hospital time.
George King was the first driver.
Good. Yeah. All right, and to wrap that up, if we could get a motion to receive Councillor Chapman's handy ride report, that would be great. Councillor Lloyd, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Then we have correspondence, item 10.1. For information? We have a motion by Councillor Chapman to receive for information. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. And then we have information items 11.1 and 11.2. Councillor Pauls? Okay. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And the motion to go into closed session. Councillor Holm, all in favor? Okay.